What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com.
Here are my DFS picks for NFL Week 11. Sleepers and studs.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button
And hit that bell icon
so you don't miss our new videos.
In this video, I'm going to give you a sleeper pick and my favorite stud at each position.
And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Oh, and good news, guys. Make sure to stay tuned to the very end of this video because we removed the box that was popping up and blocking the lineup. So now you can see a full lineup using these picks that we made in this video if you stay to the very end. Okay, guys, NFL Week 11. Let's take a look at the quarterback position. So my quarterback stud for NFL Week 11 is Dak Prescott from the Dallas Cowboys playing the Kansas City Chiefs, who have the 8th worst defense overall, and they give up the 2nd most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Dak Prescott has averaged 24 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3.3 rush attempts per game. He's only going to be about 5% owned, so that's low ownership for a stud who's in a great matchup and's got a pretty big ceiling here. He's projected at 22.7 fantasy points here in Week 11. He's $7,200 DraftKings salary and $1,200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 56 points scored in this game, and they have the Cowboys trailing by 2.5. So Dak Prescott has scored 26 and 20 fantasy points in the past 2 weeks. He's gotten 2 rush attempts in each of those games. Now he's in a super high scoring game, and it should be a passing game script for Dak Prescott, who's in a fantastic matchup at relatively low ownership. So I like Dak Prescott here versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Okay, my sleeper pick at the quarterback position is Ryan Tannehill from the Tennessee Titans playing the Houston Texans, who have the 2nd worst defense overall. They give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing quarterbacks. Ryan Tannehill has averaged 18.3 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 3 rush attempts per game. He's going to be about 4% owned, projected at 20.5 fantasy points here in Week 11. He's $6,700 DraftKings salary and $1,100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 44.5 points scored in this game, with the Tennessee Titans favored by 10. So Ryan Tannehill has scored 19, 15, and 23 fantasy points in the last 3 games. He's got a great matchup and no Derrick Henry to hand the ball off, so it should be a passing game script. So I like Ryan Tannehill here versus the Houston Texans.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching.
If you want to enter the drawing for $25 PayPal,
all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won.
And we'll send you $25 PayPal.
So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Okay, let's take a look at the running back position. My running back stud for Week 11 is Christian McCaffrey from the Carolina Panthers playing the Washington football team, who have the 2nd worst defense overall, and they're middle of the pack defending opposing running backs. Christian McCaffrey has averaged 19.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.4 pass attempts per game and 15.8 rush attempts per game. He's on the field for 84% of the snaps. He's going to be about 18% owned, projected at 21.8 fantasy points here in week 11. He's 8,900 DraftKings salary and 1,100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43 points scored in this game, with the Panthers favored by 3. So we had Christian McCaffrey on our radar last week and the week before that because his salary's been pretty low. Now his salary's ticking up a little bit here, but it's still under $9K on DraftKings. And Christian McCaffrey has scored 26 and 15 fantasy points in the last 2 weeks off of 13 and 14 rush attempts and 10 and 5 pass targets. So he got 23 touches last week. So I like Christian McCaffrey here versus the Washington football team. Okay, my sleeper pick at the running back position is Mark Ingram from the New Orleans Saints playing the Philadelphia Eagles, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 8th most fantasy points to opposing running backs. Mark Ingram, he's averaged 8.4 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 12.1 rush attempts per game and 2.3 pass targets per game. He's only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 10.9 fantasy points here in week 11. He's only 5,400 DraftKings salary, 1,400 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 43 points scored in this game, with the Saints trailing by 2. So I think this pick is interesting because Mark Ingram scored 21 fantasy points last week off of 14 rush attempts and 7 pass targets. He's low ownership, and he's got a good running back matchup here. So if he can get 20 plus touches again this week at low salary and low ownership, I like Mark Ingram here versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Okay, let's take a look at the wide receiver position. My wide receiver stud is Stefon Diggs from the Buffalo Bills playing the Indianapolis Colts, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 3rd most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Stefon Diggs has averaged 17.9 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 9.7 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 80% of the snaps. He's going to be about 15% owned, projected at 19.5 fantasy points here in week 11. He's 7,900 DraftKings salary and 200 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 49.5 points scored in this game, with the Bills favored by 7. So Stefon Diggs has scored 33, 15, and 15 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 13, 8, and 7 pass targets. So this is a pretty good game for Stefon Diggs. He's got a great matchup, relatively high scoring game here. This should be within a touchdown. So relatively close competitive game. Shouldn't be a blowout here. The Indianapolis Colts should put pressure on the Buffalo Bills to continue scoring the ball. And Stefon Diggs, we know, is a target monster, and he's got a huge ceiling. So I like Stefon Diggs here versus the Indianapolis Colts.
Real quick, guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all the tools for NFL. NBA is right around the corner. This is a great time to get in and try everything for 1 month. The tools are all about saving research time. You can see the last 3 games, the fantasy points per game, the targets they got per game, so you can see how involved they are in the offense, the rushes they got per game. Seeing all this stuff on one screen helps you save time and make better picks. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, now my sleeper pick at the wide receiver position is Rashod Bateman from the Baltimore Ravens playing the Chicago Bears, who have the 6th worst defense overall they give up the second most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. Rashod Bateman has averaged 10.5 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7 pass targets per game. He's been on the field for 100% of the snaps, only going to be about 2% owned, projected at 11.1 fantasy points here in week 11. He's $4,500 DraftKings salary and $1,300 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game, with the Ravens favored by 5. Now, Rashod Bateman is questionable, but he was questionable for the past 2 weeks. He's been playing and playing just fine. He scored 14, 10, and 11 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 8, and 6 pass targets. So he's getting plenty of pass targets. He's been productive. Now he's got a great matchup. So I like Rashod Bateman here versus the Chicago Bears. Okay, moving on to the tight end position. My tight end stud is George Kittle from the San Francisco 49ers playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 10th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. George Kittle has averaged 13.8 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 7.2 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 100% of the snaps, touches the ball 12% of that time. He's going to be about 8% owned, projected at 15.4 fantasy points here in week 11. He's $6,300 DraftKings salary, $500 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45.5 points scored in this game, and they have the 49ers only favored by 6.5 here. So a relatively close competitive game within a touchdown versus the Jacksonville Jaguars, which I find interesting. So that means the Jaguars should be able to put on some pressure onto the 49ers so that they have to continue to score. George Kittle's got a great matchup, and he scored 16, 24, and 8 fantasy points in the last 3 games off of 7, 8, and 11 pass targets. So I like George Kittle here versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Okay, my sleeper pick at the tight end position is Mike Gesicki from the Miami Dolphins playing the New York Jets, who have the absolute worst defense overall, and they give up the 9th most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Mike Gesicki has averaged 11.4 fantasy points per game on the season, getting an average of 6.9 pass targets per game. He's on the field for 73% of the snaps. He's going to be about 5% owned, projected at 12.4 fantasy points here in week 11. He's $5,200 DraftKings salary, $1,100 more on FanDuel. Vegas thinks there's going to be 45 points scored in this game, with the Dolphins favored by 3.5. Now, great matchup for Mike Gesicki here this week, and his ownership has come down a little bit because he scored 0 fantasy points last week, but he got 7 pass targets. Now, he scored 9 and 10 fantasy points in the 2 games before that, off of 8 and 4 pass targets. So he's been underperforming his season average for the past 3 games, but he is on the field for 73% of the snaps. I like the matchup. I think this is going to be a relatively close game here, and plenty of fireworks in this one. So I like Mike Gesicki here versus the New York Jets.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video, or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.